You know, a good reminder from Genesis chapter 1, verse 3 is God always pierces the darkness, always. And the darkness doesn't last.
And the high priest, the great high priest who is Jesus Christ, he puts his hands on your life and you take your hands off and you say, my life is surrendered for your purposes.
I want to welcome everybody back to another episode of the Downline podcast, where we hope this podcast helps you faithfully walk with Jesus while pouring your life into others. I'm Jamie Trussell, privileged of serving as the podcast host for Downline and as lead pastor of Redeemer Dripping Springs in the beautiful Texas Hill Country. I am pumped today. I've got my sports writer crush of the year joining us, and I became familiar with Kyle Porter years and years ago. I'll tell y'all more about that in a second. But Kyle, for those that might not be familiar with you, can you give them a little bit of your background? And then I'd love to tell them how I first got familiar with you and how we connected over this. And then we'll talk about decisions and change and a little bit of golf.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, Jamie. My background is I grew up actually playing baseball. Didn't play golf growing up, and went to Oklahoma State for college. Moved to Dallas, which is where I still live after college, and I was working in a job in insurance and retirement company that was it was a fine job. It was a corporate job, and I just didn't want to do that for the next 30 years. I could see that at the time, and so I started a website that just covered Oklahoma State football and basketball, even though I didn't have a degree in journalism, didn't really know what I was doing. I thought I did at the time, but I didn't, as we all do when we're 24, 25, whatever I was.
Hey, aren't you glad you're not covering Oklahoma State football right now?
Oh, gosh. I literally told my wife that 2 days ago. I was like, God, I'm so glad I'm not doing that anymore. But yeah, Saturday was tough. But yeah, so I did that on the side while I was doing this corporate job. And then eventually, providentially, honestly, met some of the right people and got an interview with CBS Sports and became their lead golf writer. And so I started doing that in spring or like January 2013, December 2012, January 2013. And did that until last year. September 2024 was my last month to work for CBS Sports, and just transitioned into having my own golf media business called Normal Sport, as you mentioned. And so now that's my full-time job. I cover professional golf mostly, but some amateur, some of the women's side, and kind of everything else. So it's been it's been wild. It's been a ton of fun, but it's been a pretty crazy journey.
No, I can't imagine. I'm going to ask you more about it. But look, one of the things I love about Downline is there's kind of a pretty good, robust golf community in Memphis. Like, we do a tournament every year, and, I'm very not good, but love it. But I never read about it until, and I don't have any social media anymore, but this was years ago. I think seeing Ricky Fowler post something, and there's like a caption of an article you had written about a really difficult time in life that you and your wife were navigating. And so I clicked it and read through it, and I thought, man, here's a guy who's inhabiting a part of the world I'll never get access to. And seemingly, I didn't know you at all at the time, seemingly has a really deep, unwavering faith and trust in Jesus. And since then, just so you know, like, we've had times of prayer, just thoughts of going, guys like you living faithfully in places where most Christians don't get access. That really intrigued me. Your work was great on golf, but just knowing you were always moving in that world, it meant a lot. It was really encouraging. So thanks for all you did at CBS and your faithful witness there. But what was that like for you? Because we got a lot of people listening. Maybe they're at FedEx or they're working big corporate jobs, and they're inhabiting a space that maybe, their values don't always align with others. How did you do that and navigate that personally?
Yeah, well, so the thing that you're referencing, and I'm fine talking about it, but we had a stillborn daughter back in 2015, and that was obviously life-changing. And yeah, I did write about it, and if people, you can Google it. I think it's on the Gospel Coalition now, but I kind of joke now that the fact that happened toward the beginning of my career at CBS made everything else a little bit easier in terms of like I just kind of had to be like, this is who I am. And because there's always this kind of weird thing when you work at a corporation, especially like in the, secular world, where you're like, okay, do I just like say that I'm a Christian, or do I like put it on Facebook, or like, how do I like, what's the path here to like kind of declare this? And I think that's always a little bit awkward to navigate, or it always has been for me. And so my work was obviously very public, and because the weird thing about writing is like most jobs that I've been at in the past growing up or whatever, your work is your work, and like maybe 5 people see it or 10 people see it. And in the jobs that I've had over the last decade, it's like literally anybody in the world can see it at any time.
Sure.
And that's a weird thing, but it also provided this outlet for like, hey, I'm a Christian and this terrible thing happened and I'm still a Christian and I love the Lord even more now than I did before, not less. And so that was in some ways like a good, there were obviously things that were terrible about it, but in some ways it was a good gift because it provided me with an outlet to just say like, hey, this is who I am and that's not going to change. And this is how I view the world in light of that. And so, that it feels like a little bit of an unfair advantage where you just get, it's like very binary of like, hey, this is who I am, or this is who I'm not. And so for us, it was like, this is who I am. And everybody knew. So it kind of made every other decision going forward a little bit easier because everybody already knew like, this is who Kyle is. And so I guess if there's any encouragement I would have, it's like, declare that however you can as early as possible, because it makes all the other decisions in the future that much easier.
Well, and man, obviously not you and wasn't there, but from the outside looking in, it didn't seem to be a net negative for you and your career and your kind of impact in that world. I mean, were you shocked in any ways about the amount of support that came your way from either other riders or even, PGA Tour players during that time?
Yeah. I think so. It's hard to, I mean, that was 10 years ago. It's hard to remember like what my expectations were.
That's a good point.
But yeah, I think I'm always surprised, and maybe I shouldn't be, but just when you point to something that is, and not even that situation, but anything that I've written or pointed to or said since then that has been rooted in my relationship with Christ or, my worldview, I think it's always surprising of like, it's like the C.S. Lewis quote where he talks about how friendship is just a bunch of people saying like, oh, me too. Like, oh, I also am interested in that. And so you do get a lot of feedback. And every time I'm like, I don't know if I'm surprised. I'm definitely encouraged by it. Yeah. And I think I think what's interesting, so that's from the Christian side, but I think from the secular side of like people who are non-believers, I think a lot of times they'll view things that are rooted in Jesus and declare them beautiful and not even totally realize the like what's going on or the depth of it. Yeah. And I think that's a really fascinating thing. And you see it a lot. You see people who are not believers reference things that are very biblical and declare them like good. And you're like, yes, like
I agree.
That's what I've been saying. And not even really understand what they're totally doing, which I think is I think it's cool because I think it speaks to like how ubiquitous and how large and wonderful God is.
Well, one of the things I really like about Normal Sport, kind of your new created platform and newsletter, is it's really fun stuff about golf, but you weave really meaningful stuff in and through that. And I think, at least from a believer standpoint, can sometimes pick up on and go, oh, okay, I see what he's doing here. Like, this is a very general audience, and you're working in some really meaningful things. But you weren't at CBS. So before we talk about, you're a decade almost writing right at CBS, and like what led to, because here's a lot of people, you're discipling someone, you're walking through life with someone, they're going to make a big life decision. And I can only assume after 5-7 years into your career, it's going well, you're successful, you've got a good following. This had to be a something you and your wife wrestled with, this transition that you just undertook. And if you can peel the layers back for us, how did you process it? How did you sense maybe it was time, and then ultimately get the courage to pull the trigger?
Yeah, I think there's probably 2 or 3 things going on there. I think, one thing, I had a counselor one time that I was going to that I don't know if I totally endorse this, but he said, I just like I can't remember how he phrased it, but he just said, I just live life and make decisions. I guess so. He said, I live life and I make my decisions and I just move forward with it. And I think what he was saying is like, a lot of times we try to turn every single decision that we have into like the biggest thing in the world.
Oh my gosh.
And it's like, man, most of them are pretty gray in terms of like, should I do this or should I not? It's very rare, I think, as Christians that we have a decision that it's like, that's like actually sin or not sin, right? And it's very obvious what you should do here. But I think most of them are gray, and we sometimes lack conviction to move forward. And so we're almost living in this like FOMO world. I'm the worst at this, but we live in this FOMO world. And I think what my counselor was getting at is like, don't live with FOMO. Just move forward in confidence that God is bigger than your regret or your like not maybe having like not made the perfect decision or whatever. And so I think that's been helpful. I think the other 2 things are, one, just my like talking through it enough with my wife that she was like fully in and on board with it, because I can't do anything well if we're not 100% together in it.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Because otherwise I'll just be like, I don't like this probably is not leading. We have 4 kids. It's like not leading our family. Like there just has to be 100% buy-in. So we have to get to a place where we're both comfortable. And I think the third thing, the one that was probably most practically helpful, is putting a time limit on whatever the thing is. And so the thing that really helped her was like, hey, let's try this for, I think the number that we set was like 5 months. So for me, it was October 1 through February. And then we can revisit it. And if it's not working, I can go get my insurance and retirement job again that I had 12 years ago. Right. And it was working, thankfully, in February. And so we kind of set another timeline on that and just kept doing that. And I think that provides her with a lot of security and me with a lot of like good vision for like, hey, you don't have to worry about what's 10 years down the road. Just worry about these next few months or the next few weeks or whatever. And so I think from a practical standpoint, I kind of mentioned like the philosophical or spiritual side, but from a practical standpoint, that was probably the most helpful thing.
Well, and I can certainly be guilty of, you mentioned the pragmatic standpoint of going. So we moved to Dripping Springs, I think 14 months ago, and we were in Memphis, working for Downline, working for a church there, Harvest Church. Loved both of them. Great communities, great friends, financially we were fine. But kind of going, you know what? There's never going to be, I don't think, for me, a burning bush in Midian that says, Jamie, go here and go now. And it just kind of came to the point of, I read a great book a few years back called Living Life Backward by a Scottish Presbyterian called David Gibson. And it kind of came down to like, I really don't want to die one day, kind of saying, I wish I'd tried my hand at planning a church. So our 4 kids are in elementary school. We're able to do it. Let's take a shot. In worst case scenario, it doesn't work and we do something else. And that brought a ton of freedom to me in that decision. And I feel like you touched on a second ago, you kind of called it gray. I think God gives us so much more freedom to glorify him and live out our passion. There's some really clear do's and don'ts, right? Like adultery. Let's put that on the don't list. But I think God's up there saying, I have given you a gift in life in this world. Pursue it with passion, but pursue it faithfully.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, totally. And I think, there's an element of trust there too, right? Where it's you're trusting that, hey, I think one of my faults is like idolizing my work, like making too much of it.
Okay.
And that's probably true of a lot of people that are maybe listening or just in a lot of Christians in culture. And so I think when I make too much of it, I think like, oh, well, like this like has to work out, or if it doesn't work out, then it was the wrong decision. And it's like, no, just again, live life and trust that if it doesn't work out, things are going to be okay. And the Lord has always been with you, has always provided, has always surprised, has always delighted, has always shown grace. And that will continue to happen, even if the job doesn't, even if, like if normal sport craters over the next 8 months, which is possible. I mean, it's on the table. That's okay, because ultimately my job and my career and my entrepreneurial endeavor are not ultimate. And I think that's a hard thing. I think it's an easy thing for me to sit here and say right now. It's a hard thing to remember in the day to day and week to week and month to month. And so, it's good to be reminded of that from my wife, from my friends who are not as emotionally tethered to having started this thing as I am. It's good for them to remind me of that.
Well, you know how screwed up us preachers are. I mean, I bet I've taught on Abraham and like said this one line, you know, Abraham has no Q&A for God because he has the answer to the only question he needed. Will you go with me? God says yes, right? God's already told him that. And I'm sitting there going, I'm going to be on like Palestine Zillow. I'm going to check the school system. I need to know the property values. I mean, I've got all these questions, but you mentioned that baseline trust and the fact that God promises to not leave us or forsake us. That should be enough. It's often not for me, but I think that baseline level of trust, you're spot on.
Well, I think it's not trust that like, that things will necessarily work out the way that we envision them either.
That's
and
right.
I think that's where we get a little sideways of like, thinking that God promises things that he doesn't. And it's not a promise of like, hey, your career is going to always be successful and it's always going to work. No, it's I'm always going to be with you. And we get the way that we get sideways is thinking that we need something in addition to God, right?
That's right.
Like the eternal perspective is, hey, God is all I need. And obviously like I have to take care of my 4 kids and family, and they have to eat. And I'm not saying that at all, but it's the things that I think I need in addition to God, which is career success and wealth and maybe fame for these things that I do. And it's like, you don't need those at all. You just need me. And that can be a very difficult thing. Again, it sounds like it should be easy to remember, but then we get in it and it's like, this is more difficult to remember than it should be.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. In real time, because you're looking at, my wife and I and our 4 kids too is going, this actually impacts y'all. It may not be ultimate and I may not be putting my trust in it, but it genuinely has an impact on all of us. And that's a big deal. I want to take it seriously.
Yeah.
So,
well, and that's the tension of the Christian life, right? Yeah. I have found, I wrote about this with Scotty Scheffler like 2 months ago, who, by the way, Scotty makes it a lot easier to talk about a lot of this stuff.
I'm sure. Yeah, I can imagine.
In my world, when like one of the best players of the last 30 years is like talking about it, I'm like, well, what do you want me to write about? But he talked about the tension between basically work and rest. And it was a lot more complex than that, but that's essentially what he was saying. And I have found the older I get, the more it becomes obvious that the Christian life is lived between 2 tensions a lot of the time. It's easy, I think, to run to these extremes of like, I'm going to idolize work, I'm going to be a workaholic, and not just with work and rest, but with anything.
Anything. That's right.
I'm going to, let's take food. I'm going to overeat. I'm going to indulge. I'm going to be gluttonous, or I'm going to starve myself and be harming and like all these things. Like those extremes can be easy to run to because it feels like we're in control of them. The harder path, I think, in most instances in the Christian life is in the middle, where you're having to hold these 2 tensions together. And I mean, I think that's why Jesus said like the path is narrow, right? Like it's like the middle is very narrow because it's very, very difficult, and it takes a lot of prayer and encouragement from the people around us to kind of stay there.
Well, I had that's a great word. I had a professor when I was doing my master's at Dallas. This is ages ago. And he told me every day, he said, Jamie, every day I wake up and I try to live by faith and make the next best decision. And I went, if that condensed perspective on the 24 hours of living the Christian life was always super helpful for me to just kind of bring it down. You know what I mean? When I think naturally, I'm like, everything's cosmic. Everything I do is going to, mess up everybody. And that was super helpful to bring it down to that level.
Yeah. There's a great verse in, I think it's in Colossians. I think it's at the end of Colossians. Honestly, it's a little bit of it's not popular. It's, if there are such thing as throwaway verses in the Bible, it's a throwaway verse. There aren't, but it is. And it's Paul talking about this guy named Archippus, and he's like a role player. Like he's not like the main character. And he says something like, remind Archippus to do the ministry that he's been given, or to do the work that's in front of him, something like that. And I just have always loved that verse, because I think it can be easy to think like, so I was an elder at our church for a while, and I preached a little bit, and having gone to the Village, you're like, oh, I got to be like Matt Chandler, or I got to be like Kyle Worley, who is our pastor at our church. I got to do the things that they do. And it's like, no, you just have to do the ministry that you've been given.
That's right.
That's in front of you. And that is, again, really easy to say and difficult to remember when you're up there in front of a bunch of people trying to make them laugh and trying to keep their attention.
That's right.
But to do the ministry that God has given you, I think, and to be faithful and endure is like, that's the whole deal. And so that I'm always encouraged whenever I reference that verse actually to a lot of people, and people are like, well, I've never heard of that. Like, yeah, I know, like nobody has.
Yeah,
but part of that, like, I don't know. I read it one time and I was like, God, that's so good. Like, just do the ministry that you've been given.
Yeah. That is so good. All right. You mentioned Scotty Scheffler. So we're going to turn, we got the Ryder Cup coming up. You're written about it, Normal Sport, which, by the way, just Google it if y'all haven't heard about it or been to it. I think you'd love it and be blessed by it. I'm a faithful, what do you call them? I know I'm a subscriber. I think there's a word you use for the followers. A sicko? I think I'm a sicko. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But we're headed into the Ryder Cup. You mentioned Scotty. Here's something I found really interesting. 12 guys, and I know Scotty's outspoken about his faith. Sam Burns has been pretty outspoken about his faith. I'm pretty sure Russell Henley is pretty involved in College Golf Fellowship. And I'm sitting there going, Lord, it's a pretty cool deal where 25% of the U.S. golfers on golf's biggest stage have a genuine faith. And just even thinking about what a great thing it is for believers to be really successful in their field, to earn the respect of their peers, but not also lose the values that are closest to them. As you think about the Ryder Cup, one, are we going to win?
Yes.
Two, why up until this year have I always kind of secretly rooted for the Europeans, because I'd rather hang out with them? They just seem more fun and more likable.
Yeah.
And then I do want to hear your thoughts on Keegan not choosing himself, because I've got a very non-informed golf take on it. I feel like you've got a really informed one on it. So if we could, let's chop those around for just a minute.
Yeah, we can come back to this. I do think the U.S. is going to win. I think that they have the better team, which if you look on paper, it doesn't look that way with some of the names on the European side compared to some of the names on the U.S. side. But the U.S. is, as a team, they've just played better this year, and they've been really good at home recently. If you look at the last two Ryder Cups, they won at Whistling Straits 19-9, and they won at Hazeltine. I think it was 16-12, or I think it was 16-12. So that's 30. What is that? 35-21 over the last two at home. They've just been awesome at home. Really, really good. They struggle on the road. Obviously, that's a different podcast for a different time.
Hey, so does Auburn, so I get it.
Yeah, they went on the road at Baylor and beat them.
Well, that's a good point. I took my oldest son and my daughter to that one. That was a good one.
Yeah, it was good. So that was the first point. I don't even remember what was this. Oh, the Europeans. Europeans are more likable. Like having been, even, it's fine. I love Scotty. I have been around him. I think he's so much more interesting than people give him credit for. But I don't know if he's like the greatest hang in the world. Just if you're talking about like, if you're like having I want to hang out with this person draft of all the Ryder Cuppers, I don't think he's going in like the top 5, right?
Okay.
Like he's just a normal, like wants to hang with his buddies, very quiet, like dude. He's
Hey,
not
who
the guy
is
that
in the top 5? If you're doing that draft, who are you going top 5?
Well, the problem, I mean, they're all Europeans.
Okay, all of them.
Yeah, I think so. Fleetwood's up there. Fleetwood's great. He's just so easy to talk to, fun, funny, like all the above. Victor Hovland is up there. I'm trying to think. It's hard to separate my personal.
That's right. Yeah, I'd imagine.
Like from what I think the public is. Rory's up there. He's very. You can talk to Rory about anything, like global politics. Engaging. Yeah, totally. Like soccer, like whatever. He'll talk about whatever, and it's super fun. For me, I'm trying to think of who else is even.
Is Lowry on there anywhere, or Rahm?
I don't know Lowry very well. Okay. You know who's actually kind of recently. I don't know if he's not top 5, but Bryson is very engaging.
Okay.
Like I've been around him a little bit, and when there's no cameras, no nothing, and it's like, oh, this is like he's I mean, my experience of him was that he was very personable, very nice, very cool. I don't know if he's like top 5 to hang with. I'm trying to think of who else.
Oh no, that's fun and helpful.
I like Burns a lot. He's not the most gregarious or like extroverted, but I think he's like interesting to talk to. I haven't spent a ton of time with him.
Yeah.
Ludwig is up there. Yeah. All the Euros they're fantastic.
I know. Well, my kids were watching it with me last time over in Europe, and it's just like, why do the Americans all seem like they don't want to be there? I was like, I don't have an answer, guys. I just can't answer that for you.
No juice. I mean, I wrote this after Rome, after the Ryder Cup there, and they just what happens when you're at. I don't know if you've ever been to one, but when you're at the event,
no, I've never been.
There's so much energy around like the home crowd that if you're the road team, no matter if you're, and this is, I mean, I've described it. It's like a football game on a golf course.
Sure.
And so you've been like War Eagle, like you've been to, like you've seen all that. The problem for the US is you have to bring your own energy. Like if you're at home, the crowd provides the energy.
That's right.
Like you don't need anything. Like you just go out and play golf and you're naturally carried along by the crowd's energy. When you're on the road, that doesn't happen. And you have to generate your own energy. This is why we see Rory act like a psycho during Ryder Cup weeks, because he tries to provide that energy for the European side. And the U.S. hasn't been able to generate that for whatever reason. JT's kind of that guy that should do that and has done it a little bit, but they just haven't been able to generate their own energy. And honestly, they've got some guys that are just not that.
That's not them.
That guy. Like even Brooks Koepka, you're like, he's a great player, like all time great, but he's not like he doesn't bring juice. He doesn't bring energy. Same with Scotty. Like all time, like gonna be like a top 12 player of all time. But in a team event like that, I don't know. So I'm glad they're at home. I would not be picking them to win if they were on the road, but because they're at home, I think they could go out and win.
Well, speaking of energy, I mean, when Keegan was partnered with Phil, was like maybe the most energetic pairing I can remember watching on the American side for a long time. I mean, JT and Spieth, but you got this feeling that Spieth was kind of being pulled by JT's energy.
Yes,
in a lot of that. But here's Keegan with an opportunity. And by the way, we need to get you on Full Swing. I know they interview all your buddies. We got to get you on that Netflix.
I've made cameos. I was in the like the background or in this shot or whatever. But I actually was in season 1. I was asking, I think, Tony Finau a question, and I was wearing this bucket hat that I had bought at St. Andrews, and my wife looked over and said, hey, you're in 200 million people's homes and you're wearing that hat. And I was like, listen, I don't know what you want from me. I'm a dad of 4 kids. And she's like, right. Well, I want you to like try a little bit.
Try. Yeah. My dignity's gone at this point. Yeah.
But yeah,
So
the Keegan thing. I was at the presser that he did. It was actually here in north of Dallas a couple weeks ago, and I was pretty neutral toward Keegan as a captain. Maybe pro a little bit, but not a ton. And I walked away from that just blown away by his self-awareness, his humility, I think one of my takes on the Keegan thing is like he had an opportunity to select himself, which would have been very defensible and
the
but
numbers for sure.
maybe a little bit selfish. Not selfish, but like it could have been interpreted that way. It wouldn't have been selfish, but it could have been interpreted as that. But instead, he did the selfless thing and laid down his opportunity to do the only thing that he wants to do, which is play in the Ryder Cup. And I think that has galvanized the 12. And I actually asked JT about this, and he was like, yeah, of course. Like, how could it not galvanize us? Of like, we know this guy cares more about the Ryder Cup than any of us. He didn't say that, but it was implied. And he's saying like, hey, I'm going to lay down my spot so that you guys can go win the Ryder Cup. And it's like, man, that's like the most that in and of itself is like the best thing a captain has done for the U.S. in the last 20 years.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I think that galvanization of the team is, I think it's not the, you still have to go out and hit the shots and win the matches, but I just think it's really, really important going into Bethpage.
And I don't think, I mean, you can't really look at the list. It's almost like the college football selection committee. There's no like number 13 or 14 where I feel like they really had a great argument. It seems like we got the guys, right?
Yeah, he was the 13th. Beyond that, it was like Mav McNeely, sort of Spieth, but not really. I mean, those were the 13. Like he was the one on the bubble. And once he didn't select himself, there really wasn't anybody beyond that.
Do you get a sense of kind of who was last man in between 12 and 13?
No, I don't know. I mean, there was a lot of buzz around Ben Griffin being kind of that last guy in, even though he's played better than that.
He's played well,
Yeah, he's played really, really well this year. I think he's number 7 or 8 on Data Golf right now. There's going to be people that watch the Ryder Cup that are like, who the heck is Ben Griffin?
Oh yeah, for sure.
But if you've been paying attention, you're like, oh, he's had an excellent. And that's sort of what I'm talking about. Like if you just look at the numbers, Ben Griffin's been way better than Victor Hovland this year. He's been better than Ludwig Oberg this year. He's been better than Shane Lowry this year. But if you look at the names, like, oh, all three of those guys are surely better than Ben Griffin and JJ Spawn. And it's like, well, they haven't necessarily played like it. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll find out.
All right. If I get you out of here with this, because I told you 30 minutes, I've already lied to you. You got a 12. So this is how I picked the last guy on the Ryder Cup, not named Keegan, is there's a 12-footer on Sunday to win the whole thing. And I'm going, I feel pretty good about Sam Burns taking that putt. So I love that he's on the team. Who's your pick right there from our 12 guys? If there's got to be a clinching, like Max Homa, we need the point to come through in Rome, but this actually much bigger deal to actually win it all. Who are you picking to take that putt?
Of all the guys on the U.S. team right now?
Of the 12 we got.
My answer to this in the past has always been Brooks Koepka, because you want the guy that doesn't care.
Yeah, for sure.
Like if you care too much, it's like it's not going to go well. I think that I want either. I think I want JT.
Okay, yeah, that's
no. I think I want I want either JT or Scotty. I'm having a hard time. Obviously, those are not the two best, but JT's not a very good putter. But I think that those are two guys that love meeting the moment. And there's something about the Ryder Cup that is inexplicable in the same way that a lot of things in sports are inexplicable. Of like, I don't really understand. It's very difficult for me to walk you through like why or how this is happening, but I just watched it happen, and I think the Ryder Cup, I said this the other day, but it's greater than the sum of its parts. It just has this almost like ethereal, magical quality about it that is very, very hard to pinpoint or to put a finger on. And because of that, I think those are two guys that have a real sense of the moment. They have a sense of like the magnitude of things, and they rise to meet that. JT obviously has not been great over the last several years. Scotty has been all-time great over the last several years. So if we're on the practice screen, yeah, my answer is probably different. It's probably Burns or maybe Xander or somebody like that. But if it's like, hey, I got to have this to win the Ryder Cup. I mean, we saw this with Max in Rome. Like he made a 10-footer or whatever it was to keep Europe from winning. And it's like, man, that's crazy. He said it felt like he had phones taped to his leg and they were all vibrating at the same time. Like
I can't even imagine that feel.
Oh, it's insane. And so you're not even looking at statistics or numbers at that point. You're
looking at the man. Yeah.
You're picking a human. And so for that reason, JT or Scotty Scheffler.
Well, and was there ever a more magical, like can't explain it moment than Rory and unfortunately Patrick Reed going back to back? Wasn't that in Minnesota?
Yeah, it was at Hazeltine, the 8th hole.
You can't even explain. That never happens again in any other moment. Then I don't think right then.
I was on that hole actually when it happened, and you just start looking around and you're like, what is this? You feel like you're in like the Truman Show. Like, is this happening right now?
Yeah.
And that's a lot of the Ryder Cup for me. There will be 50 moments at this event that we didn't see coming, that even in the week of we didn't see coming. And there's something about it that I think this is true of a lot of sports. Like, it's the reason that we watch and we tune in and we pay attention, because of those moments that you're like, wow, that's crazy that happened. And the Ryder Cup seems to have an inordinate amount of those.
Well, hey, you've been so kind. Love what you had to say. Just giving us a peek into your own walk with Jesus and even insight into golf. And I'm excited about the Ryder Cup. Thankful that you spent time with me on here today. And Normal Sport, check them out. Kyle, thanks.
Thanks, Jamie.
I want to thank everyone for listening to this episode of the Downline podcast. Please subscribe and go down and rate us and give us 5 stars. Help us get this content out to as many people as possible, as we hope to continue to equip men and women to join the Great Commission as we make disciples for a lifestyle as a lifetime.